Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dr. Ben Rhodes. I'm the Direct Programs Operations Manager here at the Ventura County Area Agency on Aging. And I appreciate you taking the time to learn about some of the, unfortunately, all too prevalent senior scams. So we have an opportunity, which is funded in part by Senior Medicare Patrol, to introduce a great acting troupe. But first, let me introduce Adrienne Omansky, who was a retired teacher of 38 years for the Los Angeles Unified School District, where she was the advisor for programs for older adults and adults with disabilities. In 2009, she founded the Stop Senior Scams Acting Program, which is a peer-to-peer education program that uses theater to educate older adults and their families about senior fraud and its prevention. After her retirement, she continued her passion for educating older adults and brought her program to hundreds of venues. In 2018, Adrienne was invited to Washington, D.C. to testify before the U.S. Senate Special Committee on Aging about her program and the effectiveness of peer-to-peer education as well as prevention. She's proud that in 2018, the U.S. Senate designated a day in May as National Senior Fraud Awareness Day and continues this designation with a very recent 2022 Senate resolution. So without any further ado, let's turn it over to the experts. I think you're going to enjoy this experience. Thanks.
Thank you, Benjamin, and the Ventura County Area Agency on Aging for inviting us. Today, we have the pleasure of having two distinguished educators, Ann Stahl and Dr. Sherry McCoy. Ms. Stahl recently retired as senior investigator with the Federal Trade Commission Western Regional Office based in Los Angeles. During her 44-year career with the FTC, she worked on a wide variety of consumer protection cases. Dr. Sherry McCoy is the columnist for the senior newspaper Not Born Yesterday and is an actor, writer for the Stop Senior Scams Acting Program. Welcome, Dr. Sherry McCoy.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about scam shaming, the psychology behind scams. Let me start by saying that con artists are criminals who intentionally design and engineer ways to manipulate, deceive, and control us. They are experts at trickery, conning us into believing their lies. Then, based on a lie, we take actions that are extremely damaging not only to our finances, but to our emotional, mental, and physical well-being. Scammers are sociopaths who perpetrate crimes of persuasion. And even though we may take steps to counter these tactics, we can still fall prey to fraudulent schemes. So what if the unthinkable happens? And you wake up one day and realize you've been scammed. How did this happen? What steps can you take to recover from the loss and trauma of being ripped off? First of all, it's important to realize that anyone can be scammed. No one is exempt. It doesn't matter how educated or smart you think you are, or how much money you make. Scams can happen to the best of us and the worst of us. Regardless, being scammed is a huge shock to the system. So you may say, I should have known, or why didn't I see the red flag? According to Kathy Wilson, author of the book, The Emotional Impact of Being Scammed and How to Recover, statements like these are examples of hindsight bias. Hindsight bias is when we hold our past selves accountable for things we know today, as if we also knew it at some point in the past. Further, in the past, we see red flags and clues that happened, and it sheds new light on events of the past. But we will have to work hard to avoid thinking that we should have known back then what we know today. Secondly, it's important to recognize that being scammed is not unlike losing a loved one. It's a kind of sudden death. Things are not what they used to be. We don't feel like our old selves. Who were we then, and who are we now? To recover and restore our sense of well-being requires that we be kind to ourselves and allow ourselves to grieve. Not everyone goes through the grieving process in the same way, and there is no right or wrong way to grieve. But allowing yourself to grieve is an important part of the healing process. Not allowing feelings of grief may hinder recovery. One of the most important first actions we can take to bolster our recovery after having been scammed is to report the incident to appropriate law enforcement agencies. Although it may seem difficult or even impossible at the beginning to do such a thing, this one step can be liberating and can set you quickly on the road to recovery. Let's face it, speaking out about what happened to you shows great courage. Why? Statistics show that large numbers of people do not report that they've been scammed because they are embarrassed and ashamed. Many scam victims fear that others, their friends and family, will humiliate or criticize them for having fallen prey to a con artist, saying things like they were stupid and should have known better, that it's their own fault for having been scammed. Sadly, this practice of blaming the victim or scam shaming is too often true. Scam shaming is not unlike body shaming, which the dictionary defines as the practice of humiliating someone by making mocking or critical comments about their body shape or size. Scam shaming, like body shaming, is mean-spirited at best and damaging to a person's sense of well-being. In effect, the practice of scam shaming works to keep scam victims quiet. It robs them of their voice. It hinders the healing process and helps to perpetuate scams. If you think about it, scam shaming is the psychological kingpin that helps keep scammers in business. Because if scams aren't reported, laws designed to protect us from fraudsters won't be enforced. The scammers go free and justice is thwarted. Healing involves becoming a survivor, not just a victim. It's helpful to see a therapist or counselor to work through feelings of shame, guilt, anger, anxiety, fear, etc., that come up in the aftermath of being scammed. Therapeutic support groups are also helpful. But whatever path you follow on the way to healing, perhaps the best advice is simply to talk about what happened. Fraudsters win when we are silent and lose when we spread the word about their nefarious activities. So let us adopt this motto: be empowered, find your voice, speak out about fraud. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. In this next segment of our program, we'll take a look at what it's like to be in a support group for senior fraud victims. The fraud victims are talentedly portrayed by our Stop Senior Scams acting program actors.
Hi, I'm Ann Stahl, educator for the Stop Senior Scams acting program. I'm retired from the Federal Trade Commission after 44 years of experience as an investigator. The Stop Senior Scams acting program is a peer-to-peer education program that uses theater to educate older adults and the community about senior scams and prevention. In this presentation, the actors will portray seniors who were members of a fraud victim support group. In the role of support group facilitator, Dr. Sherry McCoy, actor and writer for the Stop Senior Scams acting program, leads the group as they recount various scam scenarios as reported to federal authorities by actual victims of fraud.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the facilitator of this support group. As you know, every one of us here in this group was the victim of a scam. Talking about what happened to us helps us recover. We're all here to share our experience and heal. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your scam story. Rusty?
Hi, I'm Rusty, and I'm a survivor of the back brace scam. I saw this ad on TV that said I could get a back brace for free if I had Medicare. So I called right away, gave them a Medicare card number, and a few days later, a giant box of back braces, leg braces, and elbow braces arrived. I have enough braces for an army. Meanwhile, my Medicare card took a huge hit, and I reported this scam to the Senior Medicare Patrol. They're helping me get this thing straightened out. So take it from me. Never give your Medicare card number to anyone you don't know.
Hi, I'm Shirley and was almost a victim of the grandparent scam. Recently, I received a phone call in the middle of the night from someone saying that my grandson, Charlie, was in a car accident in Italy. And he said, "Grandma, I need you to send me the money and gift cards to cover my medical expenses. I was so upset I couldn't think straight. And then I realized my grandson never called me grandma. He always called me Booby. So I immediately realized that this was a scam and I hung up the phone. Now I tell people they've got to have a code word so they'll know if it's their real grandchild or not. And I'm still shaky from this experience.
Hi, I'm Pierre, and I was a victim of the romance scam. I met Sally at a dating website, and we fell in love right off of the bat. We wanted to meet in person, but she lives in Canada, and we couldn't because of the pandemic. Then her mother got sick with the COVID, and she needed the help to take care of her. So I sent her a few $1,000s. She said she'd pay me back. Trouble is, I can't reach her anymore. Her phone number was deleted. I don't know what happened. I'm usually pretty savvy in matters of love and romance, but in this case, I refused to admit I was being taken till it was too late.
Hello, I'm Hera. I was a victim of a pet scam. I was so lonely during the pandemic that I decided maybe a pet could help. I looked online and found this adorable Maine Coon kitty named Princess. The ad said Princess was free and all I had to do was pay for shipping and handling. So I paid $2,000 for shipping and handling, but Princess never arrived. I was so depressed and angry. Then I reported the scam to the Federal Trade Commission and then instead decided to volunteer at my local animal shelter. And now I love being with my furry friends.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I was victim of the sweepstakes scam. I'm very alert to scams, but I was taken by this one. I got a text that I won a first prize in a sweepstakes. It was for a first-class sailboat, one that I always wanted to have. All I had to do was pay the shipping and handling. I sent the money and never got my prize. I shared this with my friends at the Admirals Club. Some of them got the very same text that they won a prize. Now we are all aware of this scam. I learned the hard way. It's not a prize if you have to pay money to get it.
Hi, I'm TJ McNulty. I was the victim of a veteran scam. A woman called me claiming to be from Veteran Services and said I was entitled to additional benefits. And all she needed to do was to update my personal information. Yeah, I gave it to her. And now I'm out thousands of dollars. How could anybody treat a veteran like that? I reported the scam. And now I'm going down to the Veterans Club and I'm passing this information on to my buddies. And hopefully they don't get sucker punched like I was.
Hi, my name is Yvonne. My friends and I were victims of an imposter scam that involved hacking into my computer. I found out about it when a friend called and said she was sorry to hear about my niece getting COVID and that she sent several $100s in gift cards as I requested to help with the medical expenses. I said, what are you talking about? I don't have a niece. The scammer sent bogus emails like this to everyone in my address book. Several of my friends sent gift cards and lost a lot of money. We all had to get new bank cards because the scammers got access to our banking information. What a mess. I never want this to happen to anyone else, ever again.
Hi, I'm Mary. Recently, I was a victim of a work-at-home scam. I put my resume on a job search website and got a call from a man who said he represented a well-known company. He interviewed me right on the phone and said I was hired. He then said he needed my driver's license number and bank account number in order to pay me. So I gave it to him. He then said he'd call me in a few days to start work. Well, I never heard from him again. And now my bank account is missing several $1,000s. I tell everyone what happened to me, so it won't happen to you.
Hi, I'm Martin. I'm a former scammer. I made my living by convincing people to give me their money in exchange for products and ideas that don't exist. I knew all the tricks in the book, or so I thought. But when my sister Mary got scammed with a fake work at home gig, it did something to me. I got angry and sad because I couldn't protect her. I let her down. So I decided to reach out to other people and let them know what to look out for and make sure they don't let scammers put them under the ether like they did to my sis.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing a little bit about your often poignant and painful experiences of having been scammed. As we learn from today, anyone can be a victim. Next time we meet, I will be sharing my story. Yes, I was a victim too.
Our educator, Ann Stahl, will now talk about some of the ways we can spot scams, like the ones that were described by the support group members, as well as how to avoid being victimized by them.
I'm sure you noticed how these varied scams that were so ably demonstrated by our support group actors share several common characteristics. First, they were perpetrated by scammers pretending to be someone else, also categorized as imposter scams. Whether it was the phony work-at-home company, the woman called Sally whom Pierre met on a dating website, or the person claiming to be with Veteran Services, the victims were all targeted by people lying about who they were. So it's important to never take at face value what strangers tell us about themselves or who they represent when we first encounter them over the phone or online. Always investigate further before making any such commitments. Similarly, when we first encounter such strangers over the phone or online, they often try to pressure us into making quick decisions before we can investigate further. Any kind of pressure is a red flag that fraud may be involved. You should take the time to make sure they're who they say they are and that the offer is legitimate. Also, beware of strangers seeking our personal information. Several of the scenarios illustrated various forms of identity theft, such as those designed to steal Medicare and veterans benefits numbers and other such valuable personal information. Finally, the support group members we heard from were responding to what seemed like unusually compelling offers, such as a much needed job, a free back brace, a sailboat for practically nothing, a pet for companionship in lonely times. Keep in mind before you respond to any solicitation from a person or business that you don't know, the old but evergreen adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
And now Ann will discuss the prevalence of various kinds of scams as reflected by law enforcement data and how such fraud is affecting seniors.
Each year, the Federal Trade Commission publishes data it has collected over the previous year, showing the most prevalent kinds of fraud and how it affects consumers. The most recent report for 2021 showed that seniors lost more money to fraud than any other age group. That year, those between the ages of 70 and 79 experienced a median loss of $800, and those victims over 80 lost almost twice that amount, $1,500. The FBI, which deals with the most serious forms of criminal fraud, reported even more alarming losses suffered by seniors in complaints it collected in 2020. In those cases, the average loss was $9,175, and nearly 2,000 older Americans lost more than $100,000 each to online scams. The most prevalent category of frauds affecting seniors last year was imposter scams. Those include all of the ones we've just seen examples of: the grandparent scam, government agency imposters such as Social Security and the IRS, business imposters like those posing as your bank, or the near constant texts and calls we're now getting concerning supposed Amazon charges, romance scams, and so forth. Romance scams were the fastest growing category of imposter scams, skyrocketing nearly 80% from the number reported in 2020 by the FTC. A newer kind of imposter scam has recently surfaced, and complaints about it are rapidly increasing, those involving Zelle, Venmo, and similar free payment apps. Complaints about Zelle fraud in particular are rising among seniors because it is offered by many large banks that make it easy to sign up and transfer funds from the consumer's account to that of another Zelle user. I use Zelle to transfer funds from my bank account to my nephew and other family members for birthday gifts and so forth. In this scam, consumers are contacted by someone posing as a representative of their bank and claiming that their checking account has been hacked. The victims are persuaded to provide account information in order to resolve the problem, and then find that their Zelle account has been used to transfer funds to the scammer's account. Many consumers said they didn't even know what Zelle was when they received a phone call about a supposed problem with their bank account. One told authorities that after he unwittingly gave the bank representative imposter his account information, they changed my username, my password, my card PIN, and set up a Zelle account. Several $1,000s were then immediately transferred out of his bank account using the payment app. And once the transfer had been made, the money was gone for good. There are no legal protections, as there are with credit card transactions, for example, for defrauded consumers. In order to avoid being victimized by this kind of fraud, we should follow the same precautions as with other imposter scams. Remember that crooks can change their caller ID so that it looks like a legitimate call from a bank, government agency, etc. Never provide personal information of any kind to strangers who call, text, or email you. Always contact the bank directly to verify any claims about fraud involving your account. And in the case of money transfer apps like Zelle, only use them with people you know. In addition to the other categories, the second most prevalent category of frauds affecting seniors over the past year has been tech support scams, when criminals convince consumers that something is wrong with their computer and offer to fix it for a fee. People over 70 lost an average of $1,400 when they were victimized by this kind of fraud last year. Often such scammers claim to be with well-known companies like Microsoft or Apple. And by gaining remote access to our consumers, they may also commit identity theft. The third category on the list of scams most likely to harm older consumers is prizes, sweepstakes, and lotteries. These phony get-rich-quick offers often involve the payment of an upfront fee, and of course, the promised prize never arrives. Seniors over 70 had a median loss of $2,500, while those 80 and older reported losses of $6,000 to this kind of fraud. And now I'll turn it back over to our moderator, Adrienne Omansky, for the question and answer portion of our program.
Thank you, Anne. I have two questions for you from seniors who attended our recent programs. The first question is, should you engage the scammer on the telephone?
When you engage with the scammer, even if you are blowing a whistle in the phone, you've just confirmed two pieces of information for the scammers. They've called a working phone number and that you'll answer the phone. So we advise no, it's best not to engage with the scammer at all. The fact that you answered the phone and were willing to engage is valuable to scammers who could use it, either try again later, or they could sell your number to the highest bidder. It won't have an effect anyway, unfortunately, because these scammers are thieves and bullies who will not care what you've done to try to harass them. They'll just go on to the next potential victim. So just hang up if you do inadvertently answer a scam call. Or better yet, let any calls that you don't recognize just go to voicemail so you can determine whether it's a legitimate call first before calling back.
And thank you for answering that, because a friend of mine always loved to engage the scammer. And in one of these conversations with the scammer started to get very nasty and turned the tables on her and started calling her at all hours of the day and night. And I'm glad you answered that question, because it makes us feel good sometimes to be nasty to a scammer, or to, as you say, blow a whistle into the telephone. But the best thing is to just hang up. Our next question that so many people have asked in our recent programs, is there an effective way to block robocalls?
Well, unfortunately, as we all have experienced, robocalls have been the bane of our existence ever since the do not call list was introduced, and we thought we had an effective way to block unwanted calls. They keep coming up with new technology, the crooks out there that can overcome the kinds of precautions that protect consumers. So it's been a long battle, but finally help has arrived. The Federal Communications Commission last year implemented new rules that requires phone companies to certify that they've begun implementing some new anti-robocall technology. They've been working on this technology for some time. It's now been perfected. And the big phone carriers like AT&T and T-Mobile and Verizon have now installed this call filtering technology that recognizes most legitimate phone numbers while it weeds out or warns about suspicious numbers. So you may have seen on your caller ID, or if you have other ways of identifying a call coming in, it'll warn you spam risk or some sort of other kind of notification that the call may not be legitimate. So for the most part, consumers don't have to do anything to get these services to work. The numbers that are not recognized as legitimate will either be blocked out, or they'll be allowed to ring with that alert indicating that it could be a spam call. But they may not be automatically enabled for all phones on all carriers. So if you find that you're still getting a lot of robocalls, this is still a problem, contact your phone service provider and tell them that, and they may tell you if there's something that you need to do on your own phone to activate the service.
Where is the best place to report scams?
As I mentioned before, the Federal Trade Commission collects data on consumer complaints. So it is the best place, the Federal Trade Commission, to start with reporting consumer complaints, because it runs a clearinghouse of complaints that all other agencies at the federal, state, and local level can also report into and get data from. So the FTC, number one. Another a great place to report scams is the Senate Special Committee on Aging, because they collect data also and publish it. So it's very helpful for the Senate committee to know what kinds of scams are plaguing consumers. And third, if a consumer has a complaint about Medicare fraud, they should complain to the Senior Medicare Patrol, and we'll be providing the contact information at the end of our presentation.
Thank you, Anne. And Sherry, do you have some concluding remarks?
Yes, if people are interested in finding out more about scams or have any questions, they can contact me. I have a monthly column in Not Born Yesterday, the senior newspaper, and they can write to me at Dear Sherry. The rest of the information will be provided at the end of our presentation here. But I'd love to hear from you, and if you have a scam story you'd like to share, it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Sherry McCoy and Ann Stahl. And of course, the Ventura County Area Agency on Aging. Thank you very much.
Well, Adrienne and Anne, thank you so much for that question and answer. And indeed, to everyone who participated, Dr. McCoy, the whole acting troupe, Anne Stahl and Adrienne Omansky, what a great experience. I learned a lot. I laughed. I cried. And I hope that you all enjoyed it as well. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. This will be posted on our website. And we would love, if you have questions, particularly related to Medicare, to talk to you. We have trained volunteer counselors. You can reach us at the Area Agency on Aging's Health Insurance Counseling Advocacy Program, 805-477-7300. 805-477-7300. Thanks.